Hey everybody, CodeDodger here, and today I'm going to bring you more on the Automation to BeamNG exporter. Today we're going to focus a lot more on BeamNG. I'm going to try and demonstrate how the cars react in BeamNG and answer kind of some of the question of, is BeamNG a driving sim? Because up until this point, BeamNG has been known as a crashing sim. So it's important, I think, to me, and probably most of you, that the cars that you bring into BeamNG behave like the car that you built. If you just get a visual representation of your car, well, that's interesting, but it's not as interesting as actually being able to drive, actually. Sim form, okay? It's as good as we'll ever get. So today, I actually went in and built some cars that we will be messing around with and using those to demonstrate how the cars are driving and if they are unique to each other. Also, I'm going to give some background and some feedback as well as a little bit of insight into how to make BeamNG behave better as a sim, because it's got some issues out of the gate. This video will get dated. These things will get updated in the future. Keep in mind, if you're viewing this in the future, the date this was released, because a lot of this stuff could be changed in the future. I'm trying to give information as of right now, as of the time of recording this video. Alright, here we are on the automation test track. I got a couple vehicles loaded in already, but before we go driving, let's start with some work. Let's actually turn that engine off. Gotta save the virtual environment and go into the settings. So, to begin with, the BeamNG options menu, the UI, can be very daunting. There's so many things, and it's certainly made in a very interesting way. So it can be a little daunting, but if we want to go to controls, that's where we want to go. And what we want to do is work on the force feedback stuff. Now, I actually spent a lot of time with this because for the last couple of years of messing around with BeamNG, I've always thought, well, okay, it's an interesting game, but the driving is not very good. And most of what I got that opinion from was from the force feedback, because I just thought the cars all drove really bizarrely and they just weren't very fun. And that actually went well into working on this track, because I was doing early, beta testing of this track long ago before I figured any of this out. Okay, so BeamNG by default does not have wheel settings, basically. You got to work them out yourself, and the force feedback settings are very, very wrong for my particular wheel, which is the Logitech G27. Pretty common wheel. I'm sure the G25 is the same. I'm sure the G29 is the same. What was wrong? Well, for one, and most importantly, the force feedback was inverted. So when I would go into a turn and I would expect the wheel to load up, it would do the opposite. The wheel would get light. And I literally drove in this game like that for a long time before I figured out that this was the problem. Mostly because, like I said, the options menu is daunting, and I was just like, I'm going to stay away from that. That is a shame, because if you fix these things, it helps a lot. So here's my settings in-game. Also, let's go out and take a look at the settings outside of the game. So because of the way the BeamNG works, you need to actually go into the wheel settings and do some stuff and make sure that you have your... Now this is for Logitech wheels, this is the G27. You need to make sure you have your global device settings somewhat like this. Now my settings, all of these settings are very fine-tuning kind of elements. Most sims, you'll see, it uses all of their own settings, and you could get away with doing nothing here. iRacing is one where I kind of like to tweak with some of this stuff to get it to be really fine-tuned. The only one that you really need to change for this that I have found is right here, the centering spring. Make sure it's enabled, and make sure it's up higher than usual. I have mine at 30 for most games. This one I'm all the way up at 66. And make sure you're using the degrees of rotation that your wheel is. That's a personal preference thing, but I think you're going to have a better experience at experiencing your cars as they actually are if you're using the degrees of rotation your wheel has. So it's important to have those set, but in here, the biggest thing for me was inverted, so you got to check that. And you have a different wheel, or you have a different setup, check it. Go into a turn, and if you feel like the car doesn't load up into a turn, it feels like it gets light into the turn, you probably have it inverted. It's pretty easy to tell. The strength, I increase the strength from default, and then some of the other things, just little tweaks. These are more settings to keep the wheel from getting too rattly and keep the force feedback from getting too rattly. It may already have it, but if it doesn't, a thing that would be very helpful is to have a force feedback graph, and that would let us know when the force feedback was clipping, which would let us know if we're losing some of the effects that we should be feeling. But pretty happy with where I have it now, and this is very important. Okay, so I've made a few different vehicles that are dramatically different from each other, and my goal was to try and show if the cars drive like they should, and if the cars are all different from each other. Because like I said, if the cars are all the same, and it's just visual representations, it's neat, but it's not what we all want. So we want to be able to drive our cars. So what I have here is a very, I don't want to say basic, but it's your average sports sedan. It's got a 3-point-something liter V6. It weighs about 3,700 pounds. It's all-wheel drive, very safe all-wheel drive, front biased all-wheel drive. 245s all the way around, so wide tires, but they're just your normal street tire. And yeah, it's just an average car that should be very, very safe to drive. Let's go ahead and take this out for a spin. I'm going to be going into some of the details of BeamNG and showing some of the things that I think are really amazing, and maybe some of the things that could be improved, and I think will be. We'll see. We'll start off with transmissions. This car in Automation was set up to be a dual clutch, but it's more than just DSG. This is one of the things that BeamNG has more detail on than any other game I've ever played, and that is transmissions. So I'm currently in park. I'm going to shift into drive, and this DSG car is going to behave like a DSG in automatic mode. It doesn't behave like an automatic transmission. It behaves like a DSG that has automatic enabled, and that is impressive. I'm not doing any of this, it's doing all of these shifts. It's keeping it within reasonable rev ranges. Actually, what I should do is turn on the widget for, stay on track, for, wrong menu, this one, the gas brake and clutch. Alright, there we go, that should be in a decent spot. So, here you go. Here's automatic mode DSG, just cruising around at kind of average speeds. It's going to try and keep the RPMs in the 2,000 to 3,000 range, and it tries to keep it in a reasonable power range, basically, as you would expect. And then if I want to map the gas, it's going to downshift it. That's pretty cool. I know that's not a detail that many people are going to be like blown away by, but it's something that to me is a level of detail that you don't see in a lot of games, and it's cool to see it represented here. So that makes BeamNG act more like a driving sim. Then beyond that, you can put it into sport mode, and then it's going to let it rev out, but it's still going to do the shifts automatically. It's again not automatically shifting a manual like you would in normal games. It's doing what a computer would be doing with a DSG, and that's pretty awesome. Also, this car is a little quicker than I expected. Let's see if these street tires can handle. Yeah, they're doing alright. They're doing alright for these speeds. Alright, and then if I hit the paddle again, it's going to take me into full manual mode, and I can, shift the gears like a regular DSG. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the matter first. Well, I guess second now, because I already went on about transmissions. So, this car, it's all-wheel drive, front biased all-wheel drive. It's 3,700 pounds, moderately powered, talking to the 300 horsepower range, naturally aspirated, so it's pretty high strung. Should be a very safe car to drive, and when you push it and you want it to do things that it can't do, it should understeer. And if you listen to the tires, you'll hear that it's doing that. You can only see the top of my wheel, I believe. Even that might be just a little bit, but into the turns, you give a nice little feel of resistance, but then as the tires want to understeer, I think one of the things that's missing the most out of the force feedback is I don't get a lot of feel for if the tires have lost traction. What you do get is if you really overdo it, let's say I just barrel it into there, what you do get is a little bit of chop if the tires are very, very overloaded, but it's still a little too subtle. I think if we could get a little bit more feel, there we go, there's some of the chop. I should shake the camera, which is going to show you that it's doing that. If we could get a little bit more feel of the front tires losing traction, that would be great. But what it does relay you is the feeling of losing force. So whenever you get a car light and the back end wants to come around, you usually lose a little bit of your wheel weight, and you do get some of that. So that's good. It does, because of the settings, it's returning to center normal. Another area that's a little questionable, there's a good bit of float in the middle of any car that you make. So yeah, I don't know if you can really trying to make that visible. In the middle, there's just a weird little dead zone, even with no dead zone. It's not that the wheels aren't moving, the wheels are moving, the car is rocking back and forth. It's a force feedback kind of dead zone there. So that might be something that I need to work on my settings with, but it's something that, and I noticed this most with the BeamNG cars, it makes them feel very wandery, extremely wandery at speed. The faster the car, the more wandery they seem. So that's one area that could use a little work. On the brakes, so I'm going to hard brake down into here. The ABS is very smart. It acts very logically. I would say more logically. One of the things I always really fought in Assetto Corsa was the ABS. It always felt illogical. It just didn't seem, it seemed like it wouldn't let the car go to maximum braking potential. It would just make the brakes not work in order to keep them from locking up. This does not do that, so that's good. So that's another strong suit. I've spent a lot of time with this game now, and a lot of time lapping the track and whatnot. But most of it was in actually BeamNG cars. Now that I've been lapping it in the automation cars, the exported cars, I'm getting to see an even better side of it, because this car, it handles predictably, and it handles like the car that I set it up to handle like. It handles the bumps very well, it handles transitions very nicely, and I bet you if we turn off this ESC, it's going to still be very safe to drive. The ESC is kind of its own subject. That is BeamNG's stability control. It has nothing to do really with Automation's take on it or whatever. I highly doubt that it's extremely complicatedly coded there anyway. But there you see, it's good, it keeps you very safe, it's very smart. The drawback there is, unlike in modern cars, there's no adjustment in it, so you can't tell it to chill out a little bit and let you have some fun. You know, it's all or nothing, basically. So that's one little level of detail that's probably missing there. But if you're talking about driving your car as if you're producing, a regular street car, it behaves basically as you would expect. It keeps you safe, keeps summer safe. It does the things that you would expect it to do, which is nice. All right, here we go. These are, like I said, not sports tires. Oh yeah. I tried to enter there faster than I knew I could to see what they would do, and wouldn't you know it, the thing just wants to terminally understeer, and it should. I'll put a little overlay of what the stats on this car are, so you can see, and it should be painfully obvious that this thing, it ain't no track car, that's for sure. Alright, well, let's switch cars. I built a kind of a modern take of an MR2. Made it pretty sporty. It should be a good driving car, but I think you'll see that it drives a lot different than this car. At least I hope it does, or this whole video was made for no point. I will have proved the opposite point of what I desired, but it should be that kind of easily darted, but sometimes a little snap oversteery MR2-like experience that we all know, or at least I know because I've owned them. I love MR2s. I don't want another one, but I don't have this much garage space, believe it or not. All right, there it is. Again, these were hastily made, so I'm sorry if they're ugly. Let's turn our engine off here, save the virtual environment, and we'll switch cars. All right. So let's go ahead, change our view to that, and start her up. Can you tell what's unique about it? It's a flat 4. It's a flat 4 mid-engined rear-wheel drive car. So that's interesting. This one is your regular H pattern. Oops. Oh, you gotta push the clutch before you put it in first. Did you know that? Look how smart the transmission modeling is. Look how dumb I am. All right. I like how I just looked to the right to see if traffic was coming. I need to do that. Here we go. This car, oh yeah, should dart into the turns very well. It's not massively rear biased, but it is rear biased. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the stability control off so that we can really get a good feel for it. So let's try liftoff here. I barely even had to turn it in there. It basically wanted to do that turn on its own. Never do that. Never take a mid-engine car and lift off the gas before you enter a turn. It is not wise. Luckily, this thing's not terribly designed, so it actually handled that pretty well. It's not super powerful, only talking like a 200 horsepower. It's basically a mid-engine VRZ, is how I set it up. Around the slingshot. Very stable. Alright, the back end wants to step out a little bit there. And I do feel the wheel load up. But it is pretty wandery on the brakes at high speed. Now this is a light in the nose car, so it's going to be pretty wandery. I was probably a little too cautious with that, but be cautious with that turn. That's my suggestion. Oh, there we go. There's something cool that's interesting about the physics, is you can overcook the brakes. We were actually cooking the rear ones off there. Alright, yeah, it's got the handling characteristics I would expect. Turns in very nice. Oversteers if you lift off in the mid-turn, but it does it very nicely. I tried to set this one up so it was predominantly understeer, and then it would dip down a little bit of oversteer, but it would basically dead end to understeer. It would try to stay pretty safe. I thought about going in and making cars that were intentionally really awful handling to better show, that the cars were unique. But I thought, in reality, the subtlety between the cars is what really matters. Now, it's very hard to relay that in video, but you're just gonna have to take my word for it, all right? But I think if you know sim racing and you know how cars behave and stuff like that, you can see the differences between them all. So, I'm pretty happy. I am pretty happy. Nice. Oh, there's another factor, before I forget. Let's do that right now. Things you need to know. Gameplay. Make sure none of these are enabled. I was getting very frustrated with the heel towing because it seemed like I would always just end up in no gear. That is because these driver's assists basically aren't set up for heel towing, and for the most part it's going to prevent you from getting it into gear to try and save you from spinning yourself out and stuff like that. So if you are familiar with heel towing and you're comfortable with that kind of stuff, make sure you have those disabled. Alright, I'm gonna take... Oh, I almost did it. The worst part of this UI, this little arrow that you think is gonna collapse this menu takes you back to the main menu. I have to click the top arrow to get rid of it. Alright, I'm going to take this thing over to the handling circuit, where I think we'll see a little bit more of how this car handles and how it handles the gears getting shredded out of it. Oh, buddy! Almost didn't make it there. Alright, over here on the handling circuit, giving you even more information. I put the app on there for the wheel input so you can see what I'm doing in case you can't actually see my hands on the wheel. And this handling circuit should be a ball in this car. This should be good times. And this handling circuit is where I think you can really start to get some of the nuances of a car, really do the fine-tuning to it. Luckily, it doesn't have too much power. It's right in that comfort zone for a mid-engine car where it doesn't always want to spin out. We might see some other sides of it that we didn't see on the big track. I really love this little handling circuit. I would say we'll be spending a lot of time here. Nice. Drove it too hard into there, but it recovered nicely. It's got a little bit of that lift-off oversteer, but it's actually not too bad. I did put some stagger in these tires, which is helping it drive really nicely. Dragging tires in the dirt. Ooh, buddy, that was too fast. And too furious. Little crust. Nose getting light over that. It definitely, I think if I was going to go and do some fine-tuning for this car, I would probably give it a little bit more front grip. But it's pretty comfortable now. It's safe. I'm happy. And really, it does handle like the car that I expected it to handle like. It reminds me of an MR2 inspired car. So that's what I was getting at with this stuff. Ooh, buddy. Save it. Save it. Nice. Good stuff. Good stuff. So physics-wise, where is it? I'm sure people are going to want me to just say, you know, well, is it better than this? Is it better than this game? Is it better than this sim? It's really hard to tell. It has a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of detail in the physics. And what I previously would whine about is that, you know, it felt like there was so much going on, there was so much detail, and yet it just didn't feel cohesive. Like, it didn't feel like it all gelled together. Whether it has to do with the automation cars, whether it has to do with just the development of BeamNG, or whether it all has to do with the force feedback settings that are fixed, or I've fixed for my particular case, it feels now like a cohesive experience. If I wanted to pinpoint which sim that I've driven in it feels most like, I would say Live for Speed. It has that kind of feeling where the car just feels very direct, and what you're doing with it feels very direct. The force feedback is maybe a little lacking, but the things that the car does, they feel very logical, and they work for a street car. Versus, say, a Assetto Corsa, I think in a lot of cases the road cars tend to be a little bit unpredictable, and it just feels like the engine's more tuned for the racing slicks and the race car side of things. So, happy accident or not, I think BeamNG works very well for the street cars that you're going to build in automation. I would say it still has room for improvement, especially in default settings and such. Good times. But get your wheel settings figured out. Help everybody else too. Like, if you have a different wheel than this, and you go in and find good settings for your wheel, share them, you know? Help the community grow and help others have a better time with this, because they're gonna need it. I don't have an opinion on the controller side of things, whether it's good or not there, because I'm not really a controller racer. Especially in controller sim racer. The only game that I've ever experienced that I like with a controller better than a wheel is Wreckfest. I don't know why. They got the controller physics of that game perfect. And maybe the old Gran Turismo games. Alright, so, good cars are good. This we know. Are bad cars bad? This car's bad. This car doesn't even score well on automation. It is a 1969 muscle car, and it didn't even score 100 points in muscle. I'll put the stats on the screen of the automation build, and that seems to be a bug. Oh yeah, the clutch is not engaging until you, what is that? Oh, it seems like you have to hit it once for it to engage. Interesting. Because I was holding the clutch the whole time. Alright, well, whatever. I guess it's when you spawn a car or whatever. Anyway, so this car in automation, like I said, scores very badly. It's open differential. It has 300-something horsepower, short wheelbase, old school tires. It's not good, and it's not good. I expect it to be bad, and it is. It should be drivable, though. There's no reason this car should be undrivable if I have enough restraint. There's nothing to save me here. There's no ABS. There's no traction control. Jeez. Yep. Sounds the part. Sounds are on point. 6-liter V8. It's doable. This is so not the place for this. Let's go to the big track. And let's see what it do out there. Almost didn't make that gap. I almost did it again. I was looking. Got a big cam. It takes some time to come up on that cam. Whoa, brakes. Brakes are there somewhere. I promise you. Spinning tires. Still spinning tires. Or tire, probably. Ooh, buddy. See, that's stuff that you could never do before. At least I could never do before. Could never hold the drift in this. It was just impossible. Oop, destroyed fourth gear. Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Got it restarted by putting it down into gear. Okay. Okay. Alright. So, can you build bad cars? And do bad cars behave like bad cars? Yeah. It's gonna make our van racing league very fun. And I guarantee you, anytime I do build competitions and drive viewers' cars, there will be stuff like this. I guarantee you that. It's got a good bit of roll to it, not a lot. I think I put pretty big swing bars in it, trying to get it to do something around the turns. It's got way too much rear brake. Unless that's just engine drag, maybe. Yes, yes, no, yes. Nice. Sometimes the bad cars are the best cars. Okay, easy, easy. Nope. It's fine. It's fine. One more thing to cover. Alright, as I am in this rally spec of the sedan, I realized my big, stupid, ugly head was in the way of the gear display, so you didn't even get to see the things I was talking about when I was talking about the transmission stuff earlier. So I'm going to move myself right there for now. Now this is supposed to be a rally version of that earlier sedan. It's got a hopped-up motor, it's got the off-road tires on it, and it's some aero goodies. I'm curious how it behaves, because my previous experience with the off-road stuff in BeamNG has not been particularly positive. So I want to see if this thing is any good in the dirt. I'm going to take it over to a special road. I'm going to take a little shortcut here. Whoa, buddy, it's got some body roll to it. It still has the predominantly front-based all-wheel drive in it. Just fueling the fire for all you LX haters out there. Talking to you, Nessie. Alright. Oh, wait, I missed my turn. Nice. Well, it does that right. I need a handbrake. Will it clear the bumps? Yeah, it does have some extra ride height. Alright, let's get this thing over to... Alright, here's... Now you can see what I was talking about. Sport mode, and then manual mode. Can't believe I let that covered up the whole time. Alright, take this road. This video is getting long, so I'll be right back. Alright, if we go down the road here, down to the end of the highway, you can never leave. There was a rock slide, and I'm sorry, but you're stuck here. You may enter, but you may never leave. We'll head on to the dirt road. See what this thing is like. Should be pretty heavily understeery. The thing that I've noticed most about the dirt physics is that the tires just don't quite have enough bite. And that's something I think probably very hard to model, is that the tires, you know, when you get them sliding on dirt, it's not just a skateboard. It's not even like when you slide tires on asphalt. It's very different because the sidewall of the tire actually digs down into the surface, and that itself causes grip. And yeah, I think that's still an element that is missing. It's something that I've often complained about with, say, Dirt, like Dirt 4, and some of the Codemasters Dirt games. It's just that element that seems to always be lacking. Yeah, it's still fun, and this car is not set up very well either. It's so heavily front-biased, front-heavy and front-biased all-wheel drive, not the best of situations. But I still think there's some room for improvement here. It's better. Some of the factory BeamNG cars, well, they're really hindered by their setup, and I've made notes of that to developers. Like, the one rally car has a massively front-heavy default braking bias, and it made it seem like it was no fun, but when you change that, it comes to life. Yeah, it just needs a little bit of the dig. Sounds are good. Sounds are really good. And the road's very fun. I can't wait to show you the whole world there, because there's a lot of good stuff to experience. Okay, well, rally car or rally spec car, not an actual rally car. I would give it a... I'd give it a C. It's almost there. We'll see. I mean, maybe it involves development on my side. I need to design a better car, and that will be part of the fun, icy roads of this whole experience. But there's my take on BeamNG as a driving simulator. It has a little ways to go. There's been massive strides, and I think if your question is solely, when I build a car in Automation and I drive it in BeamNG, is it gonna drive like the car that I built? The answer is yes. But that will do it for today. I can't wait to get into this and start doing some competitions, and there's so many ideas that I want to do with the Automation BeamNG interchange here. It's going to be really awesome. Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, this video was already not tomorrow, wasn't it? Sorry. The next video I will be probably doing the track tour video with the devs, and then over the weekend I'm hoping to start our first build competition.